You've always known you were different. While others go through life content with the ordinary, something inside you has never let you settle. You felt it, a deep, unshakable calling, like a whisper in your soul telling you that you were meant for more. But what if I told you that this feeling isn't just a passing thought? What if the struggles, the obstacles, and the battles you've faced were never random? What if they were signs? Signs that you have been chosen for something far greater than you can imagine. Today we will uncover the truth behind this calling. There are unmistakable signs that God has placed His hand on your life, and once you recognize them, you will never see yourself the same way again. Always felt it, a quiet yet persistent whisper in your soul, a knowing deep within that your life was meant for something more. It isn't just ambition or wishful thinking, it is a force greater than yourself, pulling you toward a purpose that you cannot fully understand. But this calling has never come easily. From an early age, you noticed you were different. While others seemed content to follow the same patterns, something in you resisted. You could never settle for a life of empty routines. You longed for meaning, for depth, for something beyond the surface. There were moments when you questioned yourself. You wondered why you didn't fit in, why the things that satisfied others left you feeling restless. At times, you even tried to silence that inner voice, to conform, to blend in, to ignore the pull towards something greater. But it never worked. The more you ignored it, the louder it became. This is not a coincidence. In Jeremiah 1:5, God says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Think about that. Before the world even knew your name, before your first breath, you were chosen. Your purpose was written into the fabric of your being. You were never meant to walk an ordinary path. But here's the truth that few are willing to speak. Being chosen is not easy. Those who carry a great calling often carry great burdens. The struggles you have faced were never random. The setbacks, the heartbreaks, the battles, they were all shaping you, refining you, preparing you for what lies ahead. Look at the life of Joseph. He had dreams of greatness, visions of leading nations, but before his destiny unfolded, he was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. To an outsider, it looked like his life was falling apart. But in reality, every step was positioning him for his destiny. The same is true for you. The pain you have endured, the challenges you have faced, the doors that closed in your face, they were not signs of failure. They were signs of preparation. God has been refining you, removing what is not needed, strengthening what is. And now you stand at a crossroads. You can continue to question why your journey has been so difficult, or you can recognize the truth. You have been called, and everything you have experienced has been leading you to this moment. The question is, are you ready to step into it? Why does life feel like a constant battle? Why does it seem like the moment I take one step forward, something pulls me 2 steps back? This is not just bad luck. It is not random hardship. It is spiritual warfare. When God places His calling on someone's life, the enemy takes notice. You were never meant to live an ordinary life, and because of that, you face resistance that others do not. Look at Joseph again. The moment he shared his dreams, his own brothers turned against him. They didn't just dislike him, they wanted to destroy him. Why? Because even before his destiny unfolded, the enemy saw what he could become. The same has happened to you. Have you faced unexpected betrayals? Have you been rejected by the very people you trusted? Have you experienced loss, setbacks, and struggles that seemed unfair and relentless? That is because the enemy tries to stop you before you step into your purpose. The Bible is clear. Those who are chosen often endure the most intense battles. Look at Job. He was a man of great wealth, honor, and righteousness, yet he lost everything in a moment. His health, his family, his possessions, gone. It wasn't because he did something wrong, it was because he was chosen. You may have gone through seasons of loss. You may have watched people walk away from your life without explanation. You may have faced financial struggles, health battles, or emotional wounds that felt unbearable. But here is what the enemy does not want you to realize. Every attack you have faced was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to prepare you. You see, the enemy does not waste time attacking those who are insignificant. If your life had no purpose, you would not be facing such intense opposition. The reason the battle has been so strong is because your calling is even greater. Think about the moments in your life where you were on the brink of giving up, where it felt like the weight was too much to carry. But despite it all, you are still standing. You may have been knocked down, but you were never destroyed. That is because God's hand is on you. And here is what the enemy fears the most. The moment you recognize that your battles are not signs of failure, but confirmations of your calling, everything changes. You stop seeing resistance as a curse and start seeing it as proof that you are destined for something powerful. You stop feeling defeated and start walking in authority. Because the truth is, if the enemy is fighting this hard to stop you, it is because he knows what will happen when you finally step into who God created you to be. So the question is, will you keep letting the battle discourage you? Or will you start seeing it as a sign that you were never meant to live an ordinary life? Walking away. The battles were too heavy, the struggles too painful. You thought, maybe I should just live like everyone else. Maybe I should stop trying so hard. Maybe I should silence this calling and take the easier path. But you couldn't. No matter how far you tried to run, something always pulled you back. No matter how much you tried to ignore it, the weight of your purpose never left you. This is not normal. Most people can live however they want without a second thought. They can chase money, pleasure, and success without feeling any inner conflict. They can walk away from faith, from righteousness, from purpose, and feel nothing. But you feel the weight of every decision. When you make mistakes, something inside you feels broken. When you drift from God, you feel a void that nothing else can fill. When you try to live like the world, it never satisfies. That is because you do not belong to the world. You belong to God. Look at David. He was anointed to be king, yet he made devastating mistakes. He committed adultery, orchestrated a murder, and lost his way. But what set him apart was not his perfection, it was his conviction. In Acts 13:22, God still calls him a man after my own heart. Why? Because no matter how far David fell, his spirit could not bear to be separated from God. The same is true for you. This deep conviction inside of you is a sign that God has placed his spirit within you. It is proof that you have been set apart. You have seen it in your own life. The times you tried to follow the crowd, to fit in, to do what others did, yet something always pulled you back. You couldn't enjoy what others enjoyed without feeling empty. The success, the money, the pleasures, they might have felt good for a moment, but they never satisfied. Because your soul was made for more. This conviction is one of the clearest signs that you are chosen. It is not a burden, it is a blessing. It means God refuses to let you destroy yourself. He refuses to let you settle for less. But understand this, conviction is not condemnation. When God convicts you, it is not to shame you. It is to guide you back to him. Look at Peter. He denied Jesus 3 times, but he was not abandoned. He was restored. He was called again. The enemy wants you to believe that your mistakes disqualify you, that because you have fallen, you can never rise again. But that is a lie. Your conviction is not a sign that you are unworthy. It is proof that you are still called. Because those who are not chosen feel no pull toward God. But you, no matter what happens, you will always be drawn back. And that is how you know God's hand has never left you. The question is, will you stop resisting? Will you embrace the calling that has been chasing you your entire life? Because the longer you fight it, the longer you delay the purpose you were created for. Times when everything was stacked against you, when the bills were piling up, when the door you were counting on suddenly closed, when the opportunity you desperately needed slipped through your fingers. Yet somehow you made it through. You didn't always know how. You didn't always see the way forward, but just when you thought you had nothing left, just when you were on the verge of breaking, provision came. This was not luck. This was not coincidence. This was God. When you are chosen, you do not walk alone. You are never left to figure things out by yourself. God provides, not always in the way you expect, not always when you want, but always in the way that you need. Look at Elijah. In 1 Kings 17, there was famine in the land. There was no food, no water. Yet God sent ravens to bring him bread and meat. And when the brook dried up, God sent him to a widow who had nothing left, just a handful of flour and a little oil. She was preparing to die. But because she obeyed, her supply never ran out. That is how God works. Think about your own life. Have you ever been in a situation where you had no plan, no resources, no idea how you were going to make it, yet somehow a door opened? Maybe you lost a job, but an unexpected opportunity came. Maybe your finances were tight, but suddenly just the right amount appeared. Maybe you were on the brink of giving up, but out of nowhere, someone showed up at just the right time. That is not an accident. That is divine provision. But here's what many people miss. God's provision is not always about money. It is about direction. It is about protection. It is about closing the wrong doors so that you end up where you are meant to be. Many times, God will block a path you desperately wanted to take. He will remove people you thought would always be in your life. He will allow certain opportunities to slip away, not to punish you, but to protect you. Look at Joseph. He was sold into slavery. What looked like a loss was actually positioning him for the palace. He was thrown into prison. What seemed like another setback was actually placing him in the exact spot where he needed to be. The losses, the delays, the disappointments, they were not rejections. They were redirections. Because when God has chosen you, He will not let you settle. He will not allow you to stay in places that are beneath your purpose. And even when you don't see it in the moment, every closed door, every hardship, every unexpected turn, it is all leading you to something greater. So instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is God preparing me for?" Because if you look back, you will realize He has been guiding you all along. And the provision He has already given is nothing compared to what is coming next. The question is, will you trust Him, even when you don't see the way forward? Will you believe that, just as He has carried you this far, He will not fail you now? You feel things others ignore. While people around you are busy chasing success, comfort and distractions, you carry something heavier, a weight you can't explain. When you hear about suffering, it affects you deeply. When you see injustice, you can't just walk away. When someone is hurting, you feel their pain as if it were your own. This is not just empathy. This is a calling. Look at Nehemiah. He was living in comfort, serving in the palace of the king. He had access to wealth, influence, and privilege. Yet when he heard that the walls of Jerusalem were broken, he wept. Nehemiah 1:4 says, "When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven." Why would a man with everything feel so deeply about something that did not directly affect him? Because he was chosen. And those who are chosen carry the burdens of God's heart. You have felt this in your own life. You've seen people in need and given to them, even when you didn't have much yourself. You've prayed for others when they never even knew. You've felt the pull to serve, to lead, to stand for something greater, even when it made no sense. This is not normal. Most people can ignore what does not affect them. Most people can see pain and simply walk away. But you can't. Because you were not meant to live for yourself. Moses felt this. He grew up in the palace of Pharaoh, surrounded by luxury. Yet he could not ignore the suffering of his people. He tried to blend in, to live a comfortable life, but his burden would not let him. And eventually, that burden led him to his calling. You might wonder why you feel so much, why you notice things others don't, why you care so deeply when others seem indifferent. It is because you were made for more than just existing. You were created to make an impact. But here's the hard truth. This burden is not always easy to carry. There will be moments when you feel alone, moments when you wonder why others don't seem to see what you see. There will be times when you question why God allows you to feel so much when others seem unaffected. But understand this. Your burden is proof of your calling. God does not place this weight on just anyone. He gives it to those He trusts. He gives it to those He has chosen. And if you feel it, then you are part of something far bigger than you realize. The question is, will you embrace it? Or will you keep trying to silence what has been placed inside of you? Had certain people in your life, friends, relationships, even family members, who felt like they would always be there. But then, one by one, they began to drift away. Some left quietly, others through painful betrayals. Some walked out unexpectedly, and some you had to walk away from yourself. At first you questioned it. Why did this happen? Why do I feel so alone? What did I do wrong? But what if I told you that this was not rejection? It was preparation. When you are chosen, God separates you. Not to punish you, but to prepare you. Not to hurt you, but to position you. Look at Moses. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by luxury and power. But when it was time for God to use him, he had to be pulled away. He had to leave behind everything familiar, his status, his connections, his comfort, because what God had for him required complete separation. The same is happening to you. Have you noticed that certain friendships don't feel the same anymore? That people you once trusted seem distant? That the places where you used to feel comfortable now feel empty? That is because you are no longer meant to stay where you were. Some people were only assigned to a past season of your life. They were never meant to go where God is taking you. And if they stayed, they would only slow you down. Sometimes separation happens in painful ways, betrayals, misunderstandings, sudden distance. Other times it happens gradually, as your values change, as your spiritual growth starts pulling you in a different direction. And yes, there will be moments of loneliness, moments where you wonder if this journey is worth it, moments where you wish you could go back to the way things used to be. But here's what you must understand. Every person who left was not a loss. It was divine direction. Look at Joseph. The very people who should have supported him, the ones who should have protected him, were the ones who threw him into a pit. His own brothers betrayed him. But what they meant for harm, God used for good. Because without that betrayal, Joseph would have never ended up in Pharaoh's palace. Without that separation, he would have never stepped into his destiny. Some people are not equipped to handle your calling. Some relationships are not meant to last forever. And though you may not understand it now, one day you will look back and realize every closed door, every lost connection, every painful goodbye was God making room for something greater. So instead of mourning who left, start preparing for what's coming. Because the people who are meant to walk with you into your destiny, God will bring them in His perfect time. The question is, will you trust the process, or will you keep trying to hold on to things that were never meant to stay? Times when the weight was too heavy, the loss too great, the betrayal too deep. You questioned, why me? Why does it feel like every time I try to move forward, something pulls me back? You've been through storms that should have destroyed you. You've faced heartbreaks that should have hardened you. You've carried burdens that should have crushed you. Yet here you are, still standing, still fighting, still breathing. That is not an accident. That is proof of God's hand on your life. The enemy has tried everything, attacking your mind, your relationships, your finances, your peace. He has used people against you, circumstances against you, even your own thoughts against you. He has whispered lies in your ear, telling you that you are not enough, that you will never overcome, that you should just give up. But despite it all, you are still here. Look at Paul. In 2 Corinthians 4:8-9, he says, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." This is what it means to be chosen. The attacks come, but they do not win. The storms rage, but they do not break you. Look at Job. He lost everything, his wealth, his family, his health. The enemy thought he had won. But in the end, God restored him and gave him double of what he had lost. And that is what is happening in your life. The enemy thought he could break you. He thought the struggles would silence you. He thought the battles would make you walk away from your calling. But what he didn't realize is that every attack has only made you stronger. Every hardship has built your endurance. Every loss has deepened your faith. And here's what the enemy fears the most. He did not succeed. You have been through the fire, but you were not consumed. You have faced storms, but you did not drown. You have been knocked down, but you have never been destroyed. And now, something is shifting. You are beginning to see that every battle was not a punishment. It was preparation. Every attack was not a setback. It was a setup for something greater. The very things the enemy used to try to stop you, God is now using to launch you into your destiny. Because the truth is, if you were not a threat, the enemy would not have fought so hard to stop you. And if you are still standing after everything you've been through, that means one thing: God is not finished with you yet. So the question is, will you let the battles define you, or will you let them refine you? Because the war isn't over, but neither are you. The question is, what will you do with them? You were never meant to live an ordinary life. You were chosen for something greater. The battles you have faced were never meant to break you. They were meant to prepare you. The time for hesitation is over. It is time to step into your calling. If this message spoke to your heart, declare it now. I know I am chosen. Because the truth is, you always have been.